So within the editing stage of the project, I applied, obviously, I just highlighted and applied fades and crossfades throughout the entire project. At the intro here, you can see I've applied a quite a large automated fade in for the element that's kind of introduced within the intro. I'll further discuss that later on within this presentation. Um, Throughout a couple of the tracks, I had to implement strip silence to get rid of any like adjacent noise or kind of any kind of resounding kind of resonances that didn't really want present within the track. Um, I had to apply certain cuts and whatnot for pieces of music or like elements or instrumentals that I wanted within the track and pieces that I didn't want. And obviously, the majority of them once I kind of had strip silenced them, made sure that they were fine. They were all kind of like perfectly in sync. I consolidated each track. Yeah. So if we kind of move over to the mixing stage, actually no, I say that if we go up to the initial kick track, and then I kind of like I'll zoom in on this here now for you. So as you can see now in this top line on my initial kick track here, you can see the series of transients as obviously the kick is playing throughout the series of the track. My initial approach to this, I kind of wanted to create like like I guess a replication, I guess, of like a one shot to use it for the purpose of sample. So I was initially going to use it as like a sample. Like a sample track, really, but I didn't end up doing that. But I did kind of condense it down with strip silence, made sure that every single transient was kind of hit, to kind of maintain that consistency and dynamics throughout. So I did that for the entirety of the track for this one. If I kind of move over to the mixer, my approach to it within my kick track, I applied some reductive EQ. I sent it through a compressor, and then I applied some additive EQ using the SSL channel. To kind of really bring it out, though, I thought, oh well, there wasn't really any resounding kind of like sub frequencies. This kind of boom is what I really kind of wanted present within the kick track. So I created an auxiliary bus, and I kind of side chained a frequency, like a sine wave kind of frequency at around 56 hertz to the initial kick track to kind of give it that extra edge, really. On my second kick track, I just kind of retained it as it is. I gated it. I used the channel, the SSL E channel, just to apply a little bit more to it. And when I was going to finish with these three tracks, then was I got my sound generator kind of enforcing the initial track, and that kind of nice within that kind of perfect within the mix. I sent all three of those out into a parallel compression bus, just to apply a little bit more reinforcement, I guess, to the kick overall. In regards to the snare, same again, I guess. Really, I applied some reductive EQ to get rid of any resonances I didn't want apparent within the track. I compressed it. I sent it through the CLA mixer, which I previously mentioned within one of my videos. It's a fantastic plugin. It allows you to view various tracks up to like 64 tracks. You can control it with one singular plugin. So I kind of use that for some additional EQ, and plus I use the SSL Waves plugin for additional EQ on top of that again. For the bottom snare track, I did the same type of thing again. Obviously, I'm using the CLA as a bucket, so I EQ'd them, kind of multi EQ them, I guess, within the same plugin. To reinforce that, then I additionally created another parallel compression bus, sent both of those tracks in the top and the bottom snare track into that, give it a little bit of reinforcement, and I additionally wanted kind of individual control, I guess, on the levels with the snare, so I kind of bust them through a VCA group, a VCA master, just to control that. With the hi-hats, I did some reductive EQ. I sent it through the BF76 compressor because I thought it sounded pretty nice there. I used the SSL channel to apply some additive EQ in a similar sense to what I did with the snare and the kick. I bust both of them through into a stereo auxiliary, and I did some parallel compression for the hi-hat. I retained the toms that I use within the track instead of replacing them with the Steve Stick trigger plugin, because I thought they sounded perfectly acceptable for the project I was currently working on. Did some reductive EQ, as you can see here, to kind of get rid of any of those kind of like bass frequencies. I kind of pinpointed a few frequencies here that I didn't particularly want, so I kind of took them out. Same then you can see here, with the with the floor tom, I did a bit of a high end cut because there was a lot of bleed, I guess, resonant from the hi hat and other instrumentation. So, and then I applied some additive EQ then to kind of really bring out those kind of frequencies that I really wanted to, apparently within the mix. In regards to my overheads, I purely just sent through some, I approached them as a stereo pair, panned them hard left, hard right, and then I applied some additive EQ. And additionally, in opposed to some of the other tracks that I've been doing, I additionally had a room mic placed in the center of the room using the Aston Spirit just to kind of capture any ambience or any of the room ambience in regards to when the drums were being played. And I thought it blends very nicely within the mix, so I thought I'd kind of retain that within the overall mix, and then I just applied a little bit of reductive EQ just to get rid of any kind of resonances that I wasn't particularly fond of and that didn't sound particularly pleasant within the mix. With the bass, I did a blend of the DI capture and the 52, the 52A, the Shure 52A that I captured. So on the DI track, I used the BOD bass overdrive just to give it a slight bit of distortion. It obviously comes in, it was a dry signal, so I just kind of wanted to distort it slightly. I sent it through the compressor, the DBS compressor, one I'm particularly fond of and I use it a lot with all of my productions. And then I sent that through, did some additive EQ within the SSLE channel, which again is a very fantastic plugin. Similar approach then, although with the mic bass track, I ended up using the BF76 in opposed to the DBX 160 because it just seemed to work very well. So and then I added once again the SSLE channel for some additive EQ. In regards to the guitar tracks, there were kind of various. There were quite a few guitar tracks kind of performed, recorded separately throughout the process of this project. We essentially had three variants of guitar tracks. So we obviously had you had the DI track, and then you had your in and your out. So you had your left and your right. But in regards to this kind of series of guitar tracks, I believe this was the Stratocaster, so the single coil, the initial single coil recording. So on the actual DI, I put it through the SansAmp just to give it a little bit more, quite a bit of distortion, quite a bit of crunch to kind of really reinforce the drive that is apparent within the playing. I applied the SSLE channel for some additive EQ for the left and right. And as you can see here, there's within the actual mix itself, within the actual project itself, there's like a main kind of riff that's established on the guitar. So I kind of partitioned that. I copied and pasted the track and laid one here as to control it kind of separately. And I kept the DI, really kind of really manipulated in the way that I wanted it to be. So as you can see here on the riff DI stem, I've sent it through a GTR kind of preamp. It kind of applies like a bit of a cream, so it's like a slight bluesy kind of overdrive sound. I've taken out some frequencies that I wasn't particularly fond of. I've compressed the track. I've applied some additive EQ, and then, as you can see, I've kind of rolled off the top end slightly just to kind of get rid of any high end stuff, any kind of high end kind of like humming or like kind of squealing resonances that were apparent within the initial recording. The second guitar track, very much the same. With the second guitar track, the second guitar was played with I believe it was a Gibson Les Paul, I believe. So it was a dual humbucker guitar. So my approach to that, I just initially applied some additive EQ. I didn't really need to do any reductive because it was sounding quite nice within the mix anyway, in regards to the raw audio. Moving on to the main vocals now, I did quite a bit of vocal production, I guess, because obviously I wanted that to kind of really become apparent within the mix. But there were quite a few of like vocal issues in regards to tuning, and sometimes the pitch was slightly off. So I used the Waves Tunes plugin to kind of analyze the whole waveform from start to finish for the track. I obviously then kind of went through it bit by bit and kind of making amendments here and there as and when was needed, just to ensure that the entire vocal track was in tune. I then applied some reductive EQ. I also used the sibilance plugin just to get rid of any kind of like resonant or like any like really harsh sibilance that was apparent within the current mix. It works pretty well. Again, using the DBX 160 because it just sounds really fantastic. It sounds fantastic on vocals, and I really like it on drums too. And then I applied some additional EQ, then some additive EQ. Additionally as well, like an approach that I don't normally use within vocal production, but I use a little bit of gate as well, because whilst this was a multi-track and a studio production, the initial take comprised of the drums and the Stratocaster and the vocal track. So there was a tiny little bit of bleed just from the drums. Like I'd already kind of positioned them so there wouldn't be that much bleed within the mix anyway. But I just kind of used the C1 gate just to kind of really get rid of any resonances and bleed within the main vocal track. And then finally I used the vocal rider, which has become pretty much the standard with any of my vocal productions, because it's just such an excellent piece of kit. And like I previously mentioned, it allows me to kind of ensure that the vocals kind of stay apparent within the mix, so that the overall instrumental mix doesn't kind of overpower it. I applied like reverbs and delays as well on the initial multi-track stem for the main vocals, which also did the chorus and reverb as well for the double track, which I'm not now going to talk about. Again, the same. I applied some vocal correction using the SSLE channel for some additive EQ. I gated it as well, and I sent it through the vocal rider. As you can see here, it's become apparent on all of my vocal tracks. And then for the backing vocals, I again sent it through some pitch correction and just did some additive EQ and applied some time-based effects just to kind of really add some elements to it. In regards to the time-based effects that I'm using for this project, I've used the Eventide 2016 reverb, fantastic plugin. The R-verb, because I wanted to provide variance in the types of reverbs I'm using. I use the H delay as my choice of delay, and I use the rotor speaker as well, which becomes which I kind of use at various points within the mix. Yeah, so that pretty much covers the multi-track and the time-based effects. This year, the filter sweep. Now, this is interesting. This is something that I decided to kind of implement kind of later on, I guess, within the productional process. Like if you can see here, oh, there we go. You've got the filter sweep here, and if I just zoom down a little bit for you. Kind of within this section here, you get your filter sweep here, and you can see that it's actively running. So what I've essentially done, if I just go back to this, I've assigned it as assigned a signal, like a white noise signal at 20 dB, just to be active, currently active the whole time. But I've used it particularly just for the introduction. So how I've done this is, see that filter sweep over here at the introduction, and you've got the riff kind of playing in conjunction with that. You've got the filter sweep, it kind of comes in and it does a sort of kind of like a sucking effect just for the purpose of the intro. So I automated that sound. Now if I go here, if I go to the automation, you can kind of see where I've kind of pulled it in here, and I'm really opening that filter sweep, and then kind of suddenly pulling back in it there. Like when you listen to the actual mix master, you'll be able to hear it, then it's quite apparent within the mix. If I just set that back to wave volume, I go back to my mixer. Yeah. So in a like I explained within the introduction, once I got my full kind of mix sorted, I then bust them all through to stereo and mono buses, so I could further kind of mix and apply like additional EQ and maybe make any amendments or any kind of additions to any time-based effects that I wanted to use. In my approach with this particular project, so if I kind of look here, and you look at it, I open up this plugin, the CLA mix hub I used to bucket all of them together. As you can see here, you can see all of the EQ parameters for all of the stem buses that I'm using before I go into my final stereo bus. So I did a lot of additive EQ here, and when I was kind of happy with that, you can also see as well I applied some additional reverbs to the single coil Stratocaster and humbucker Les Paul buses as well. So once I was happy with my mix and kind of apply my additive EQ, I bust all of those into a stereo bus, which I used the solid bus comp. I normally use the Waves SSL bus compressor, but I thought I'd give the Native Instruments solid bus comp a shot, and it sounds particularly good in regards to this project. So I can obviously I try the track with it on, I try the track without, but I thought it just kind of adds a really stronger element to the mix, and it really kind of binds it all together. So once that was done, it was pretty much the same procedure as I've done in my previous projects. I bounced out from the stereo bus into an audio track, and then I recorded each variant of the track within real time, and then I then I named them all appropriately as per requested as part of the assignment. So yes, that's that's pretty much my presentation, or my kind of like my overview of the song Advantages that I recorded and engineered at the start of the year by the band Bloom. I hope you guys have enjoyed the tutorial, the overview, and I hope you all enjoy the mix master that's going to be included within my portfolio. Thank you very much.